It's time to explore the world according to Glenn. I'm Kevin Jacobsen. Glenn Close is my favorite actress, and this show is all about exploring the career of one of the finest actors of her generation. Each episode, I'll be joined by a guest as we dive into one of Glenn's movies, TV shows, or stage productions, going chronologically through her career, discussing her performance, and assessing the project itself. And today, we're talking Glenn's Emmy-nominated performance in the third season of Damages.
Time nominee Glenn Close, motherfuckers.
My guest today, believe it or not, is the first three-timer on The World According to Glenn, having previously guested on the Meeting Venus episode and the Lion in Winter episode. Welcome back, writer and podcaster Eoin Daly.
Thank you for having me back. First three-timer feels I'm not worthy. I don't think so.
I think you're worthy. You are enough, Eoin. And I also think Patty would be like, you're a good number two. You may not be like on the wall, but like you do serve your purpose, you know?
You know what? And if Patty Hewes is willing to actually talk to me and talk me down, I would feel worthy in that moment, even if she's reading into me.
Yeah, that's part of the experience, really. So anyway, before we talk Glenn in season 3 of Damages, I know your relationship to Glenn Close, as you talked about on your first episode, and you told me your idea on the second episode for a future Glenn role, where I believe it was a remake of On Golden Pond with Glenn and Meryl, which I love. Still love that idea. So my alternate question for you this time around is a fun one that kind of blends what I had just done on my podcasting experience of Best Actress. If you could recast Glenn Close in a Best Actress nominated role, what would it be and why?
Yeah, so this was like a massive question to sort of narrow down because we have 98 years of nominees, and knowing me, I couldn't just nail it down to one. So I've decided to.
I'm sure you have a list. Yeah.
So I've decided to kind of offer two answers. One answer from the pre-Glenn Close actress nominee years, and then one in the years since Glenn Close has been a Best Actress nominee.
Okay, that's smart.
Okay. Yeah. So my first, I think we, as a society, were tortured to have to watch the Lucille Ball Mame movie. And
sure.
whether it's a remake of the musical or the 1958 movie, I think Glenn Close would make a fabulous anti-Mame.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language. I love this so much.
As you've talked about throughout the podcast, it's like this woman knows how to do kooky. She knows how to sing. She knows how, she can do everything. She can wear a fabulous outfit. She can be broad in a way that only Glenn Close would be possible. So I think she would be an amazing anti-Mame in whether it's a musical adaptation or the film.
Well, I'm obsessed with this idea already. So well done. You've done it again. But what's the next one? Yeah.
Yeah. The next one is kind of, it's something that you've spoken about before. I think if this film were made in sort of, I guess, the 80s, Glenn Close would be the first casting choice. I would have loved to see Glenn's version of Tar. It's like,
yes,
this woman knows how to cut and knows how to just play an unlikable character, but do it in such an amazing way that you end up liking her, even though you necessarily shouldn't, because she's just so fabulous.
Yeah, and there's the sort of dark, dry humor of Tar that she could really play into. I'm just picturing her at the playground being like, I am Petra's father, it's speaking in German, oh my God, and think of all the suits she would wear. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And maybe to continue from my last answer is maybe we could get Meryl Streep in the Nina Hoss role and just sort of have, again, I'm just really wanting Glenn and Meryl in a sort of quasi-queer relationship, you know? We
Yeah.
deserve that as fans of both actresses.
Mm-hmm. We deserve that as queer people to give
Hmm.
that in our lives. It's third time's the charm for Glenn and Meryl in a movie because Lord knows the first two tries didn't quite work out. So I think this would be excellent. Wow.
Hmm.
Imagining Meryl in that slightly more submissive role too would be fascinating. Yeah. I love this. As you know, I have talked about it quite a few times on this very show about how amazing she would have been in Tar, and it makes me so sad that we never got that, but there is still time.
Not
Is it Todd Field who was?
exactly. Yeah. I almost was going to go with another Todd Field actress in Sissy Spacek in the bedroom. I think Glenn,
Yeah,
like, imagining Glenn breaking the plate is
that's what I
just
was
like
gonna say.
something I would have loved to see. So what I think
Yeah.
what we're really saying is Todd Field, the next actor you need to have star in your film is Glenn Close.
Yes. And now I'm picturing her in Little Children and having sex with Patrick Wilson. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, I could absolutely see Glenn and Michael in the 80s doing Little Children.
Yeah, 100%. So
Hmm.
there you have it. Glenn and Todd Field, they need to link up.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. Well, on that note, let us move into what we are talking about today. So, as I discussed at the beginning of last week, after season one, FX renewed Damages for 2 more seasons. So the showrunners knew they had season three ahead of them, which I can only assume helped them with long-term planning. Also, just to briefly note this is Glenn going into the 2010s. So we're out of the highs and lows of the 2000s and heading into a new decade, which we'll also have some highs and lows, you could say, and a few more Oscar nominations this time around. So, yes, much to look forward to there. But for this third season of Damages, one thing also I forgot to mention the past 2 weeks is that each season has been loosely based on real life cases. Like season one being based on the Enron scandal. Season two wasn't really one specific case, but generally about energy corporations and toxic waste. And now season three is very directly based on the Bernie Madoff Ponzi scheme scandal, which was a huge news story in the late 2000s. Also, not entirely sure why, but it was surprisingly hard to find interviews from the time of the showrunners when they talked about season three. But one thing that came up in a few of those interviews that I could find was that family was the overarching theme of this season, which extends not only to the case of the season, but to each of the three main characters of Patty, Ellen, and Tom. And as always, the producers brought on some heavyweight talent for this season, including Len Cariou, the Tony-winning star of Sweeney Todd, and also former partner of Glenn's back in the late 70s and early 80s, to play Lewis Tobin, the patriarch of the Tobin family who's been charged with running a Ponzi scheme. Campbell Scott plays Tobin's troubled son, Joe. Lily Tomlin, the great Lily Tomlin, plays Lewis's wife, Marilyn. And Martin Short plays Leonard Winstone, the family's lawyer. So also both Lily and Marty said they were huge fans of the show at the time. I found a very funny quote from Lily Tomlin where she said, "It's the only show she runs home to watch." So huge fan, and Marty said it was an easy yes for him as well. But yeah, with all that said, season three takes place about a year after the events of season two. Ellen has now left Hewes and Associates and is working at the district attorney's office. Patty has been appointed by the U.S. government as a trustee to investigate the Tobin case and find the billions of dollars that have gone missing in the wake of the Tobin's Ponzi scheme investment fraud, which left hundreds of thousands of investors in financial ruin. So Patty goes after Lewis as well as Joe, who's complicit in the fraud, and off and on with Marilyn as well, who also knew all about it. Meanwhile, Ellen finds herself drawn back to Patty when the DA is looking to arrest the Tobin, so their paths cross a number of times, and Tom is dealing with a crisis of his own when he realizes that he too is a victim of this Ponzi scheme, resulting in 70% of his money being lost, though he initially doesn't want to tell Patty about it out of a sense of pride. But his personal investment in the case leads him down a path of desperation that, as we see in the flash forwards as early as episode 1, results in his death. Wow. Plus, as we also see in the flash forwards, Patty gets into a violent car crash with a car ramming into hers, and the driver is kept a secret until the finale. So, yes, a very juicy season. So, with all that, Owen, would love to know your relationship to Damages then and now, your thoughts on Glenn and season 3.
Yeah, so when I think of Glenn, Damages is certainly probably the first thing that comes to mind. It definitely was the first thing I saw her in, but it's sort of in how, I mean, the fact that Glenn committed to starring in a show for 5 seasons is like a major investment in her time and sort of revitalized her career. And having watched Damages weekly at the time, it was just so great watching this sort of one of the foundational television shows at the turn of the 2000s when basic cable sort of became like the it network. And yeah, it's just so great rewatching this show. It's the type of show where there's so many elements to how the show is that I just thoroughly enjoy, no matter how sort of dated they might feel or sort of over the top they might feel. There's something fun and consistent and comfortable about watching the show that continuing to be an avid television viewer as I am, I miss. Like, we'll probably get into it, but how the first episode opens with this incredible like montage of like screens
Yes.
of what has previously happened is something that I had forgotten about, but was
Yeah.
so amazed by. Like, it made it into like it kind of started this season as a sort of made it feel like this kind of conclusion of this like 3 season story that we had been getting for
Yeah.
Damages.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Also had forgotten about that as well. That's actually that was gonna be one of my like minor observations at the end, is the idea of like this very dramatic sort of like panels of, scenes throughout the first 2 seasons. I really wish more shows would do this. Just really have fun with these recaps, and just like really like they really hype up everything that's happened so far to really catch people's attention, because I also think, as we all sort of talked about, FX was struggling to really get ratings for this show, and it would lead to the cancellation, at least on FX, by the end of the season. But that beginning, I'm just like, holy shit, what is this show? I would be tuning in.
No, exactly. Like, it's the power that a previously on recap has on television is something that we just don't get anymore. And is
I
something I
know.
miss about this era of television where it can really sort of invest you in what the episode is going to give you. Like, some of the previously ons on Damages will reference like a scene from like episode 1 of season 1 where you're like, why are we, I forgot about this. And then it sort of makes
Mhm.
sense in kind of element they mention in the episode. Is just it's an underrated part of television storytelling is the previously on and how it can manipulate your feelings going into watching that next hour of television.
Yeah. And people should pay attention during that segment as well. It's not just filler while you can look at your phone and wait for the episode to start. It actually gives you good context for what you're about to see. So that's my little PSA for that. But
Mhm.
yes, what were your overall thoughts on season 3?
Yeah, I mean, having just watched season 2 beforehand, it's sort of like season 2 is not as compelling as season 1, but this third season really sort of brought back the fire and the passion that I had for that first season, where it was telling multiple stories, but it was so focused on the singular main subplot of the Tobin family and how it reverberates through our central 3 characters, especially, but also characters related to them offshore, that I was really compelled watching it, where the focus felt much stronger. And maybe the fact that, as you mentioned, they knew season 3 was coming when they were producing season 2 sort of gave them the freedom to sort of maybe plan season 3 while they were creating season 2 and sort of reach this conclusion. So it felt much more focused in comparison to the season that had aired just before.
I agree. I love this season, actually. I think it's also a very dark season of television, period. Like, and that is a compliment in my book, to be clear. Like, there's a
Mhm.
quality to this season that feels like they've been given even more carte blanche from FX to just do whatever they wanted and to really push the limits. And I'm specifically talking about the finale, which really needs its own segment. Just what they do in that finale is just like, I'm still thinking about days later. But yeah, there is something about the storytelling this season that to me feels more personal and complex in what it's doing. And again, it's sort of defined by the case of the season, because the first two seasons, it's like we had these big baddies like Frobisher and Walter Kendrick who are kind of like these bullies and like larger than life figures. Whereas this time around, it feels kind of like just more complicated and like, it's really investing deeper into each of these characters as deeply flawed human beings, and I mean, Lewis, the guy you would think would be like the big bad here, isn't even in most episodes, with Len Cariou here being like a special guest star only, and the focus is really mostly on Joe and how he is really slowly corrupted into making these really vile sort of actions to protect his family. But also, like, there's no fun in that or like an entertainment quality to it that might have been there in the past season. It's just kind of like tragic in a way. Like this season feels like a Greek tragedy to me.
Yeah, like the Joe character, as you mentioned, like Campbell Scott in that first episode plays him, at least from when we first introduced him, is sort of as a more soft-spoken, unknowing person. And then by the end of the season, he has become this violent, like murderous, completely guilt-ridden person. And it is quite a tragic arc that we experience from him, with sort of his other family members playing small little roles in sort of corrupting him, whether it be in the flashback or in the present storyline.
Yeah, and so there's that very like that Shakespearean element here that really appeals to me, just dramatically speaking, with the storytelling. And also this decision to kill off Tom is risky, you could say, but to me it really adds a great deal of audience investment in seeing how this possibly could have happened. And then by the end, with like, Patty and Ellen being basically unofficially working together again and more bonded than ever, even if they come out ahead in this Tobin case, there's a real sense of loss here and almost even like futility. Like almost this is like a Pyrrhic victory for them, because look at what was lost in all of this. Like, who was really coming out on top? Even like the people who had lost their money, they were so disenchanted with how Patty was doing things that they wanted a new lawyer after all that time. And so, who's really happy by the end of any of this? That's what makes it such a fascinating, like, dark season,
Yeah, like I think the choice to kill off Tom was sort of a genius decision, where obviously he had served sort of as a third lead in the first two seasons, where I enjoyed Tate Donovan and his sort of like compelling performance, but knowing that his finale was inevitable by the end of the season really made his work much more compelling. And sort of the desperation, the desperate moves that Tom makes, whether it be not revealing to Patty that he is personally invested in this Ponzi scheme, or even just him trying to make sure his family does well, or just everything that he does, it really, I agree with you. This is such a dark season when you think about it. Like, but there are those sort of light moments that I appreciate. Like in the first episode, that sort of reunion scene that we have between Patty and Ellen in the bathroom. Yeah. I really enjoy Rose's line reading of, "If you want to talk to me, don't play games, pick up the phone and call." Like, it's just sort of, there's such kind of smart little moments that like they find funny moments throughout that make it necessarily not a triggering watch to watch every, like it makes it a fun thriller is what I would think of the season as. It's sort of like thrilling from episode to episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you were talking about with the bathroom scene, I think, is one of the highlights of the premiere, where I think this is at the point where Ellen's just trying to do like little busts of like drug dealers in their narcotics case, and Patty sends Ellen this $3,000 Chanel bag as like a gift, which she's puzzled by, and Ellen finally goes and asks her about it in the bathroom, and wondering also if like, oh, Patty, did you have like a little bit of an influence in, me being able to flip this drug dealer in this case? And Patty's like, oh, Ellen, you're just being paranoid. And I do think she is being a little paranoid, but it's also understandable that, Ellen cannot give up that feeling after spending all that time with Patty, of seeing how she plans things 10 steps ahead, and like her getting this mysterious handbag from Patty shortly after she's had this big win at the DA's office. I get where Ellen might be a little suspicious. But yeah, she's like, yeah, stop playing games. Just be upfront. It lends some credence to what people had wanted, some corners of the internet, with the two of them being like in a bit of a relationship of sorts where they're just so weirdly codependent at times, and the way they speak to each other does have that quality that would make people want to ship them, you know?
Yeah, it's sort of that familiarity the two characters have built with one another, where they sort of, by the end of the season, obviously with Tom's passing, they're sort of the last two people who sort of know all about each other. Like Ellen is probably the person who knows the most about Patty in the world, and she doesn't even obviously know every single detail about Patty because Patty is quite a closed character who isn't willing to reveal anything because she has vulnerabilities that she's never willing to address because she always wants to present as a strong person. So the
Yeah.
moments of doubt that others have in her, like those people that she's defending, sort of crack away at her. And yeah, it's just so incredible to see the building up of the Patty and Ellen relationship throughout these first three seasons, that it just makes you love both actresses and both characters and makes it sort of an iconic television duo that maybe people don't talk enough about.
Yeah, certainly not. Do you want to talk any about, of course, our bigger guest stars of the season with Martin Short and Lily Tomlin, who I think are both really going against type here, playing much more dramatic roles. I mean, Martin Short doesn't have like a single funny line in the whole show. And he's really going down a little bit of a similar, functionally, a path of Ray Fisk with Zelshko Ivanek's character in season one. And I love Lily Tomlin as well as this sort of Lady Macbeth type of figure at times. I just love the two of them here.
Yeah, I mean, Martin Short has never, as far as I'm aware, has never done anything this dramatic before
Yeah.
or even since. And he's incredible. Like how he manages to play this sort of mysterious character throughout the whole series is just incredible to watch. And sort of, you never know what he's going to do next. And the more you sort of learn about him in bits and pieces, makes him such an odd character. And then, yeah, Lily Tomlin is just like, whoa. Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, I mean, she has done dramatic work in films like Nashville and the work in David O. Russell films that she had done, or like The Late Show, or I could mention many of them, but she
Yeah.
is playing this sort of like, I want to say Real Housewives of like rich ladies, like the
Yeah.
wig alone, the constant
The wig.
smoking, the wig alone, the constant smoking, how she sort of nestles herself in a scarf. I think in that first like interrogation scene she has opposite Patty Hewes is another highlight of the
Mm,
first episode, with these two acting titans going against each other, is just incredible to watch. And while their scenes are far and few between, I treasured every time Glenn and Lily were acting opposite each other, because I could tell
mhm.
that both actresses were just like devouring being able to star opposite each other. And I'm sure there were a lot of laughs shared off screen as well, because like Lily is just like a frank and direct, funny lady. But yeah, both are such brilliant choices in casting and are so integral to the success of this season that I couldn't imagine anyone else playing the parts other than them.
Right. I love that with when Marilyn is like, I like you, Miss Hughes. You know what it's like to have a husband who betrays you. Like that was a read. That
Yeah.
is a Real Housewives kind of confrontation. Um, but yeah, Patty's just like watching her like this, like almost like this Cheshire cat. And I love how we just focus in on her reaction to, and when Marilyn says that, like, men have their secrets, Patty then retorts back to her that women are better at keeping them.
See, yeah. So
You know?
good. Like
Yeah.
it's such great writing in that it's juicy, but in a respectable way, where say
Yeah.
if, I don't know, not to besmirch this man, but say if this were a Ryan Murphy production, it would have it would have sort of come off less respectable. Like it's just
Yeah.
sort of this intelligence of the writing and how both act, especially Glenn delivers a lot of that dialogue, and how you can tell she's just smiling, grinning, and she's sort of being like, well, women are better at keeping secrets, you know?
Hmm.
And it's just, yeah, it's just such a wonderful scene. I don't know. It just brings me such joy to talk about, because I love seeing
Yeah.
two great actresses who I never would have thought acting together appear in
Well,
something like this. And that's what you get on television, series like Damages.
yes. Well, more on Glenn and Ryan Murphy later on in this series. Maybe he'll
Oh
come back
yeah.
for All's Fair. How about that?
You know,
I mean, some of her line readings to Sarah Paulson are like, my goodness.
yeah. Well, we love when Glenn reheats her patty nachos.
It's true. She put on her shake and go patty wig and just said whatever Ryan spouted out. So,
Hmm.
anyway, from there, to speak more about the case, I mean, it's like Marilyn meeting with Joe, and after like he's pressing her for information on who Lewis, the father, called on this fateful Thanksgiving night, she does finally give a phone number to him to kind of keep his conscience clear. And Joe then goes to Patty with the number and asks that in return he not be implicated in anything, that he have it officially on the record that he didn't know about this scheme or anything, which a lot of this is very suspicious behavior right off the bat. But from there, I believe, is when we get the reveal of the phone number being leading to Danielle Marchetti, who is this receptionist at the health club, played by Machen Amick of Twin Peaks fame. Exciting to see her personally, a television great. Um,
Hmm.
and it's like this turns out to be a very like serious situation with Lewis telling Leonard to get Danielle out of the country as a way of preventing her from being subpoenaed. But just again, loved seeing her pop up, Machen, even though it's ultimately a small role. But whenever any Twin Peaks person shows up in something, I always have to take note.
Of course, like it's a small but not thankless role. Like it's
Yeah.
very important, sort of starting the great mystery that is sort of the Tobin legacy that slowly revealed to us throughout the season.
Right. And of course she is run over by Joe by accident? Question mark? Not so much, I don't think, but well, not completely runs over, backs into her, and she, I believe, is just knocked unconscious. And that's what makes her become a real person of interest for a bit, with Lewis, again, like wanting her to leave the country immediately and to get on this flight. And Patty now knows about Danielle and wants to take her in, but she kind of has little evidence at the moment, and the people at the DA want to sort of play by the rules. So it's really tough. Like, she can't do all that much except to
Mhm.
get Tom basically to do some of her dirty work and makes him go out to meet with Danielle. But also, he can't really get to her because, like, Joe has called Leonard and also their family doctor, who's basically on their payroll, and they protect her. So, a lot of this is like, I was going to say a fun wrinkle in all this, but it's not really fun because, like, a woman is injured and, has brain damage. But it kind of just shows, like, the fallibility, I think, in all of this. This house of cards, in a way, can, like, very easily come tumbling down with even, like, this minor complication.
Yeah, and it's this sort of sequence of scenes that starts the downfall of Joe. And when he discovers that Danielle was willing to speak to the DA and then
Hmm.
basically is inadvertently killing her by not revealing to her that she shouldn't travel to the airport is like a truly dark moment that upon rewatch I was like, whoa, like he is not the sort of carefree person that maybe we were first introduced to. Like he is perhaps even more villainous than his father because his father
Yeah.
was sort of taking advantage of people's money, whereas this man is willing to kill a person.
It's despicable, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he really plays into the sliminess, Campbell Scott, in this character. Because, like, again, it's a very different flavor compared to the villains of the first two seasons. That is just like,
Hmm.
you can't even really delight in his villainy or anything. He's just like a gross, awful person with not many redeeming qualities. So, yeah, and it's also kind of a wild reveal too that we get somewhat early on that Danielle, because she is supposedly the mistress of Lewis, had been with Joe, quote unquote, before his father. And that is just a really wild sort of reveal with this conversation that she and Joe have. And she's showing these signs of brain damage and is like repeating these things, these phrases. And the doctor is telling him that she probably has a subdural hematoma, like this bleeding in the brain, and that she absolutely cannot fly. And he's just like, well, he says you're free to fly. It's really gross.
Yeah, like if the season wasn't any more Shakespearean, introducing the possible co-relationship between a father and a son is
Mm-hmm.
is as gross
Yeah,
as it gets when it comes to Shakespearean texts.
I know. And it's also like just very random like string of events that lead to Tom noticing that Joe had a busted taillight, right? And is like able to use that to have Patty tip off the police about it, to flag the car that they were going to the airport in, and the cop discovering the unconscious Danielle in the back seat. It's wild. If Tom hadn't have been there, everything
Yeah,
would have
and
been
this
different.
and this leads up to an incredible scene between Martin Short and Patty Hewes at the airport, where she sort of
Mm-hmm.
comes for him and is like, "Ah, well, you've revealed that, you're willing to protect this family." Like, again, we don't get
Yep.
many scenes between all these actors, but like Martin Short's sort of look of surprise in that moment is just brilliant, especially in connection with Glenn's sort of like, I've won again. I got the upper hand in some ways. It's just so incredible. Like, how even
Mm-hmm.
3 seasons in, the show manages to find these moments of surprise. I just love it.
Yeah, it's very creative, and I'm sure they had a ball in the writers' room devising these things and just snowballing, But from there, I mean, Danielle is in the hospital, and we learned that like in another 15 minutes she would have been dead if she wasn't being treated. It's also like a little bit of like the Uncle Pete situation from last year, where like someone just has a lot of power and they could say anything, but they're also in recovery, and like there's no telling what they might say or do. So perhaps a little bit of reheated nachos from Uncle Pete, but like it does become an opportunity for Patty to leverage the DA to delay Lewis's sentencing, while they wait for Danielle to wake up, and then have Patty confront Lewis with what she's learned from Danielle. Plus, there's the problem of Joe being kind of a liability, someone who seems to have a very guilty conscience and also a drinking problem, which is a bad combination. And like the family's fearing that he's drinking again. I love again the tension of that and how it sort of informs the theme of this season, with how like people are trying their best to keep up appearances, but like a few loose lips could have
Sink
everything
ships.
crumbling down and could sink ships. Very good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's that you mentioning sort of the family connection. It is such a season that is focused on family because I think in that fourth episode is where after Joe is sort of being caught going to the airport, we also get Ellen's family problems in sort of
Oh
like
God. Yeah.
which Ellen's family, dare I say, perhaps the worst character on television is Ellen's father, who each time he appears throughout the series is actually such like a frustrating watch because this man
Yeah.
just continues to just sort of berate every single woman he comes into contact with.
Yeah. Just a little bit sexist, you could say. Uh,
Yeah.
he's rough. And I have to be honest, every time we do get to Ellen's family, I'm just like, my God,
Mm.
what are we in for this time? Because they are such a handful. And
Yeah.
that's why I'm just like, ugh, Ellen, I know that you do by the end of the season say that you want a family, but like
Hmm.
when you look at where you came from, it's just like it's tough, you know?
Yeah, but you do get, I mean, you will get into it when you talk about the final season, but there is that great moment
Yeah.
where Ellen finally confronts her father, which is one of the scenes that
Mm.
I think about when I think of the series, especially for the power of Rose Byrne's acting from behind a fringe.
Right. Yes, more on that in a few weeks.
Hmm.
But also fascinating how Joe kind of justifies his father's actions to I think it's his son, Kevin. And he asks him like whether he always knew that like grandpa was a bad guy. And Joe is just like, well, sometimes good people do bad things. And how like, maybe because even though he thought he had everything, he still felt bad about himself. And people who feel bad about themselves sometimes do bad things. Like you're definitely seeing some psychoanalysis here of Joe kind of processing what his father may have done. Again, like based on what we know as we're watching the season, because as we find out later, Joe had a lot more to do with this than you would ever imagine. But it's kind of just like how you justify things in your mind to make things right, in your opinion, at the time, even if from an outsider's perspective, you'd be like, you are an evil person, but the person doing this is just like, I had to do what I had to do.
Yeah, like that's such a common theme of Damages as a TV show is characters defending their actions by believing it's the right thing to do, and that works with the Joe character, but then also Patty as well in decisions that she has made, especially as a mother herself and parent
Yeah.
figure. That obviously this season then gets further into as her son comes back into her life.
I love just watching Patty dealing with Michael and his geriatric girlfriend, as Patty would call her, Jill,
Yeah.
who is now
Hmm.
pregnant. She is
Hmm.
pregnant with Michael's baby, another wild reveal, which is very fun. And you're just imagining, how is Patty going to deal with all this? And she does kind of what you expect her to do, which is just be like, I don't want to have you to have anything to do with my son. I will pay you whatever you want. All of
Hmm.
those scenes, I think, are where we get, in the middle of this very dark season, a little bit of comic relief in a very
Yeah.
dry sort of way, because it's certainly not a comedic situation. But the way Patty's just like, I want nothing to do with you. You need to get out of my family's life. It's just like her desperation to me is so funny.
Yeah, and it's again a brilliant scene between is it Jill who the name of
Yeah,
the
Joe.
character,
Yep.
like that scene where Patty offers to just buy her out is so wonderful, where she's just
Hmm.
like, I will give whatever. And then knowing that Jill sort of takes the money and just continues to splurge on Michael, like buying him a new car and buying him this apartment, and sort of knowing that Patty can't really do anything because she knows that Michael already hates Patty. And even if Patty were to tell Michael that she tried to bribe Jill, Michael would be like, "And your problem? I don't have a problem with this. You're the one who
Yeah.
thought a little money would wash away any sins that you have done as a mother."
It's unbelievable. Yeah. But just to kind of get back into the case, I mean, there is so much bloodshed as we go further into the season. I think even as early as like episode 4 is when Lewis decides to kill himself
Hmm.
rather than like face the music here. Like it's his last day of freedom, and Joe, his son, hasn't visited him, and he has no faith at all for him or anyone to carry their family fortune forward. And I think he's just like, I want out. I'm out of moves, and that's it. But also, he leaves behind this envelope of something we don't know quite yet to deliver to Patty Hewes. But Joe arrives, of course, just in time to take it for himself. I also just want to briefly talk about Glenn and Len Cariou that I mentioned a little bit earlier, because they were, in fact, in a relationship many decades prior and had not acted together on screen during that time. But she says they've always been friends. And just the way that she doesn't let up in that interrogation there, I just love, like, going after how like where is your money hiding, and gets very personal about it, saying like, oh, you don't have anyone to really trust your family fortune with, which you could tell is true on some level, but he tries not to let it show. But also, even from there, I love the scene right after that of the interview having gone relatively poorly, because on the surface, Patty hasn't really gotten anything from Lewis. And Ellen's colleague at the DA is kind of like wondering why she only asked him questions that he's already been asked. And Ellen very correctly assesses that Patty has probably tried to give off a certain perception to make it so that both the DA's office and Tobin and Leonard Winstone kind of underestimate what she may already know and is keeping in her back pocket. And it sort of is like this way of trying to see what Tobin will do next, basically. I think it's very clever. And Ellen knows from experience that like what things look like with Patty on the surface are very rarely actually the case, you know? And I just love
Hmm.
all those scenes where Rose Byrne is kind of just like, it's very much an attitude of like, I'm not buying it. Like she just kind of cuts through the bullshit and is just like, I know Patty. Here's what she's doing. And she's right more often than not. So she's learned from the best.
Yeah, like you can tell in this third season how much Paddy has infected Ellen. Like there are
Totally.
similarities. Like the Ellen that we knew in the first season no longer exists. Like this is not like a sort of like monster as a Sue, Paddy Ellen sort of combination of both. And there are moments where how Rose plays certain reactions where there's just like a silent facial reaction that I can see her sort of imitating Glenn, and
Yes.
I really enjoy that, and like it doesn't feel forced. It feels natural, and it feels like a character progression that we're getting to see sort of Patty inadvertently crafting this new Ellen into sort of her successor, who doesn't obviously want to be her successor, but sort of has now become that because of how their relationship has been explored and developed throughout the first two seasons.
Yeah. And I feel like also to the show's credit, it doesn't actively tell you these things. It really does show you through Rose's performance and, even some of like the cosmetic sort of like how she does her hair and the way she holds herself is a very clear progression from the beginning of season one to that more steely eyed, like toe to toe looking at the both of them is just like they seem cut from the same cloth, you know?
Yeah, like this
So,
season includes that where we sort of have then Ellen kind of playing of both sides, and
hmm
seems like an attempt to pull off a Patty move that doesn't obviously end in a way that Patty. It doesn't end in a winning moment for Ellen, where she sort of falls victim to both sides, sort of discovering that she is playing the in between. And it's a
yeah.
great sort of moment of like progression where we are getting Ellen failing, but sort of learning from her mistakes of being like, okay, I can't do things in the exact same way Patty does, but maybe if I were to then do this later on, it's just
Yeah.
clever in the writing how it's so the character arcs are just so brilliant, and as you watch the three seasons, it just really comes all together.
It's so fun. Yeah, it is like this kind of mini game just watching also like when Patty is sort of like warring a little bit with the DA and Ellen is of course involved in all that and like Curtis Gates, I believe that's Ben Shankman, realizing that Patty withheld evidence about Danielle and basically is stonewalling her from like talking to Danielle before he can. Meanwhile, Patty kind of wants to do the same. It's just like this all of these different little sort of Cold War-esque sort of battles between these two sides, and Ellen is sort of caught in the middle of everything and trying her best to sort of navigate her way through all of it. And to your point, like she is not Patty, but she has adapted from her style to make it fit her own. So, yeah, it's just recalling to mind certain like reality TV stars for me of like talking about like Survivor and how certain people play with someone like the winner of their season and then they go on to an all-star season and they adapt certain traits of the winner of their season, but you can't just copy that person necessarily. You can take those traits and apply them to how you play the game.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what Ellen is doing here, basically.
Yeah. You can't always beat them with this, but you can always beat them with this.
Yes, exactly. And Owen is pointing to their head. This is not a visual podcast, so I just needed to explain that for the listener. Anyway, some of the stuff with Patty's new associate, I do think we have to talk about this poor woman.
Yeah, especially in that sixth episode where she sort of
Yes.
is given a test that the way it's presented in the show is so alarming. Like I mean, Wallace Shawn is sort of he's this enigma of a performer where he can be so delightful but also so terrifying. And as we are first presented to him, he is sort of seen as this gross, sort of manipulative man that Patty sort of sends this girl into be victim to him. Like it's such a weird episode, a weird standalone guest appearance that
hmm
I really appreciated. Like again, like Martin Short and Lily Tomlin, the fact that this third season finds the space for Wallace Shawn, a great comedic actor, to sort of play this great dramatic guest spot is really impressive.
Yes. Yeah, Wallace is playing like this man behind bars who Patty had prosecuted in the past, but also kind of is using a little bit as like I think he even says at one point, like, I'm your Hannibal Lecter. it's it's wild, and especially hearing it in his voice. But yeah, that's because she is visiting him because he knows of like insider trading and all these different things, and he can sort of help her, and he has the mind for guys like Lewis Tobin. And so in that way, very much like a Hannibal Lecter for her, where he is indicating like that you should look more for a government, not a person, if you're looking to find the Tobin money. Then yeah, to your point, that's where he's like, yeah, the rest is going to cost you something, like a quid pro quo, a conjugal visit. And yeah, the very next scene that she brings him in is like this, again, that prospective associate who desperately wants to work for her, Patty, and asks her if she's ever been to prison. Just a wild reveal that's like, this woman really about to like pimp out her new associate?
Hmm.
And then we have a scene shortly after that where she goes there and like is unzipping her boot, where Wallace Shawn is like watching lecherously at her. It's very disturbing, I must say.
Yeah.
And
But then as it's revealed that she is just gifting him this caviar, and it's sort of a great reveal is probably not the right phrase, but sort of a great misdirect moment
yeah,
that that episode of television has the space to do.
yes. I mean, I think this part of it is a little bit of a gross fake out, but at the same time, like, it is a fascinating trick because, like, we as viewers have been trained to believe that Patty is quite literally willing to do whatever it takes. And that very well could include pimping out her new associate if it means accomplishing her goals for, like, the greater good, you know? So it's not implausible what we're led to
Hmm.
believe, which is unfortunate, but
Hey, Patty Hughes is a complicated woman who I would believe would do anything to win.
yeah, very much so. No matter what collateral damage there may be, you know? See what I did
Hmm.
there? Anyway.
I
But after that visit, that's where, Patty's learning about like Antigua as this great place to like bury accounts back in the 80s. I think that's where Wallace Shawn is calling it like this. The Caribbean is like this financial candy land, and that Tobin's fortune is likely there. And their investigation comes up short when they realize that like everyone they've been investigating can't possibly be responsible for the offshore accounts because they have to be opened by a citizen of Antigua, and there's also no record of any Tobin associate going to the Caribbean at all. So like I love how this case, as it goes along, it really provides so many fascinating sort of roadblocks that feel to me even larger than the first two seasons of how is Patty going to get through any of this, because the first two seasons I feel like are so centrally located in the US, a lot of times in New York, and now it's like this sort of global thing where there's also so many different pieces going on that it's like, how are they possibly going to figure this out?
Yeah, like it feels rightfully expanded for what you would expect a long-running series to
Yeah,
do, and sort of it doesn't feel like it's jumping the shark in any way. Like it makes sense, even if like the location jumping can feel it sometimes a bit faster than maybe would realistically happen in the world. Like I
sure.
think sometimes Tom jumps between the States and Antigua like within a scene.
Yeah. He truly has a teleporter in certain episodes this season. I think that's also where Tom is sort of deducing that Danielle's daughter is probably the one who set up the account, considering she works as a flight attendant, so she's in and out all the time. So yeah, Danielle also has a daughter. I think also Dominic Chianese shows up around the midpoint of this episode too. Sopranos alum who played Uncle Junior as Stuart Zedek, this mysterious friend of Lewis Tobin's who allegedly had the fortune. And Joe's like meeting him at a subway, sort of like this informal meeting where Joe wants him to prove that he had the fortune or else he'll turn over everyone in to the authorities. But you think that a lot of these different disparate parts are sort of just like, what does any of this have to do in terms of connecting in the end? And yet somehow it all falls into place in a very impressive way to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, like exactly. Like we didn't even mention how Danielle sort of by this point has died and
Yes.
is connected in with another Tobin family member, which is Carol and the daughter who we
Yeah.
don't sort of get to know a lot very early on. She seems like a tertiary character, but then
Yeah.
there is a moment in the season where we focus on her like having mental health problems and sort of finding out that she, like her other family members, is willing to do anything to sort of protect the family, whether that
Mm-hmm.
be a murderous rampage as well. It's like, it's really dark. And it's like, I agree
Yeah.
with you. I think all these, as opposed to like the season before, there's so many things
Yeah.
happening, but they do reach a satisfying conclusion by the end because while there are so many things happening in different places, they all surround this same sort of case that they all eventually pay off, whether it be characters being killed off or characters sort of being put to the side. It reaches a satisfying conclusion, which makes the season that much more compelling.
Right. And, to our point here, like we have this whole diversion to Antigua, which also figures into everything of where he meets, Tom meets Tessa, Danielle's daughter, played by Vanessa Ray. But Zedek is panicked, realizing like they're onto them. And Tom finally interviews Tessa, who seems to indicate she's just been signing papers for this money without really knowing what it is that she's signing. So that is a very exciting lead.
Yeah, and I think it's at this point in the season that obviously we know Tom's fate is inevitable, that he's going to die. So every sort of c- task that he does for Patty, like going on this trip, feels
Yeah.
so tense because maybe this could be the end of him, especially when what happens to the Tessa character almost immediately when she agrees to sort of be a part of maybe bringing down the Tobin family and her end. That is a shocking moment, like her mother, where
Mm.
it's a small role, but it's inevitable in sort of showing how willing this whole family and organization are willing to go to protect themselves in a way that is disgusting but sort of dramatically pleasing.
Yeah. Again, it has that Shakespearean quality to it. And I also love the scene in the middle of this. I think it's around episode, 7 or so, where she sits down, Patty, with Leonard Winstone and is questioning like why he is so loyal to the Tobins, and basically says, there's still time to get off this sinking ship, basically. And that's where Glenn's line reading is so cold and chilling when she's like, so after 27 years, you're entirely loyal to the Tobins. You probably think you're like family to them, and it hits a little different with Patty herself saying this, because it's like, well, Patty, that's, let's read that back and like look in the mirror and say that again, because you also treat your close associates with a similar sort of coldness and ruthlessness, you could say. But it does obviously get him thinking a little bit. And I think that's, again, what makes this show so compelling, is that Patty's behavior in some ways can mimic that of the people she goes after, which is what makes her so brilliant. It's sort of like, to use a sort of contemporaneous comparison, it's like the whole conceit of Dexter, of like this serial killer who targets serial killers. Like, he knows the tricks, he knows what he would do, and that sort of gives him a leg up. And I think that's somewhat similar to Patty as well, in how she conducts business with this very, cold ruthlessness that can sort of assess these things. And so she knows full well what this Tobin family, probably how they treat Leonard, and she probably knows how Leonard feels about it deep down.
Yeah, no, it's pretty incredible. I think in this episode as well is when Leonard sort of is kind of caught off guard because his mother is revealed to have died.
Yeah.
And I think this episode was the episode that Martin Short submitted
Mm-hmm.
for his Emmy nomination, which makes total sense because it's a brilliant sort of showcase moment for him. And sort of it's in this scene with Patty that how it sort of differentiates his character from maybe the Ray Fisk arc, that makes both characters sort of compelling and different from one another, which I really enjoy, because the show could have so easily made both character arcs similar, but
Mm-hmm.
I think both actors are so diametrically opposed, and yeah, it just makes the inclusion of Martin Short in this season well worth it to get this scene with Patty.
Yeah. I love it so much. And that's I think that's when also he is going home to meet with his father, who is a bit of a jerk, you could say. And that scene in particular, though, when he's talking to Leonard and is basically being like, I see you on TV defending that family and hiding their crimes and saying like he's a bigger fraud than they are. Can I tell you what this reminded me of? Because I feel like we might be thinking of a similar thing. It reminded me so much of Margot Martindale in Million Dollar Baby, where she's just like, people see what you're doing and they laugh. That's kind of the energy that he is bringing to this, of being like, and is indicating, I think, also to the audience that like Leonard might not be exactly who he says he is. That he has a very different background than he lets on.
Yeah, I mean, let me bring my cultural reference, which would be, they're all gonna laugh at you.
Okay, well, that too.
Now I'm imagining a Margot Martindale appearance on Damages, and
She would have been so
I'm
great.
sad. She would have. I mean, she was on another FX show, two FX shows, so we had Margot Martindale on this network, but she would have served, I'm sure, as many great character actors would be on this series.
I can very easily see her on a park bench smoking a cigarette like she did on The Americans and won an Emmy for it.
Two Emmys, yeah.
2 Emmys for sitting and having a cup of coffee and having a cigarette. And anyway, just to get to the latter part of the season here, Tessa's just like not really budging at all from there of like what she knows about what happened on Thanksgiving, which really starts to get under Tom's skin, because I love watching Tate Donovan and how he is increasingly like sweaty and like very desperate because of his personal investment. And he feels like Patty is being a little too slow in all of this, trying to playing the long game here, because like he's in a very desperate situation and his wife is putting pressure on him. So there's a little less of a finesse that he may have had before, which is what leads him to kind of scaring Tessa a little bit when he comes at her with these claims that like the Tobins actually had her mother killed. And so she goes to the DA's office and asks about it, names Tom and Patty and all this, which alerts Ellen's coworker that Patty might have been tampering with their case, which explains why they've stalled in their investigation. But of course, her coworker just sells Ellen down the river in all of this, played by Eben Moss-Backrack, a very early role for him, and is just like spilling to their boss that Ellen has been talking to Patty this whole time. Very slimy, But even when Ellen convinces Tessa to talk to Patty, like her being ratted out leads to the DA arresting her, which is, again, very frustrating. Yet another roadblock. It's a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot, and it's really sort of bringing up the tension as we get into these final couple of episodes, and sort of there's so many plates spinning in the air that if it were a less trusted creative team, you would feel, oh, how are they going to reach a conclusion with all this? Which they do, thankfully.
Yeah. And in, again, very dramatic and very dark and upsetting fashion. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Because, like, there's another, again, speaking of spinning plates, like Leonard's father coming to town unannounced and trying to blackmail Leonard about, like, what he knows about his past, to basically he just wants to squeeze more money out of him, his son, mind you. And it once again speaks to that theme of the season with like family baggage and past actions coming back to haunt you. And it's like these very carefully constructed new lives that could very easily come apart, And that's what brings me to like another comparison of something that was on TV at the time with Leonard, I think of Don Draper and Dick Whitman, or even to keep it in the AMC family, like the Better Call Saul, Jimmy McGill, Saul Goodman type of situation, of this sort of reveal of Leonard essentially reinvented himself, of like he had gone to prison or at least jail, because we learn all of this after Leonard has to bail out his father because he got in some sort of brawl bar fight, and then Ellen gets a tip from a police officer to the reporter to then her, who had noticed like a very strange situation here of Leonard bailing out this man who turns out to be his father. And they investigate everything into Leonard essentially and learn he's been living under this false name, that he took someone else's name. I mean, I find this to be a very fascinating series of events that is just another, like, the little butterfly effect of all of this. Like, if Leonard's father hadn't come to town begging for money, then they may not have solved this Tobin case, because they wouldn't have had the sort of blackmail stuff to, send to Leonard to make him turn on the Tobins. It's again very complicated, but the plotting of it is like clockwork.
Yeah, it's a lot, but like so
Yeah,
streamlined and sort of makes sense where every like it's the season manages to be both slow in pacing but also really quick in how it reveals information, but like
right.
everything makes sense with the previous reveal. And yeah, as we obviously get to know, like I think the Dick Whitman Don
Mm,
Draper comparison is quite a great one. I mean, it manages to like it's not the exact same because obviously it's not the central character, and how obviously we don't get to see how Leonard sort of took over this identity. We're just sort of told about how it happened, as opposed to the Dick Whitman, where we see how that whole played out on that series. Also, spoilers for anyone who's not watched Mad Men.
it's in season
But
one.
whatever.
It's fine.
But yeah, I think it's a pretty incredible series sequence of events. And again, Martin Short, get this man more dramatic roles. Like
Yeah.
we are in our modern times, we are luxuriating in the relationship that is Marty Short and Meryl Streep. Get them in a drama together. That's all I'm saying.
Wow. Yeah, I would love that. Do them in On Golden Pond. What does
Oh,
that look
oh
like?
my God. I
You know,
mean, that'd be so good.
free ideas. Yes.
Hmm.
But this whole part really gets the ball rolling with Ellen giving that information to Joe Tobin, which is such I think the show captures so well when like Ellen or Patty get like that kernel of exactly what they need to set the dominoes in place to get the Tobins turning against each other here. And you do find yourself kind of rooting for them, despite those, you could say, unethical moments, to put it nicely. But I think you do start to feel a little bit of sympathy for Leonard in these moments when, like, Ellen's tipped Joe off about this, and Joe confronts Leonard about it, which is exactly what they had planned on. And Joe is calling him a fraud and, like, just not giving him an inch to even explain himself. And Martin Short, I think, is so great in that scene of just, like, the sort of quiet desperation in all this. And, like, so many of his scenes could have been so much more overplayed than they actually are, to really portray like the vividness of this character, but he so underplays everything in such a subtle way that is quite striking. But I do love when Leonard does give it back to Joe a little bit though, and saying like, Lewis needed a son, and he knew that Lewis couldn't count on Joe to be that, and that Joe even says in retaliation of that is that like Lewis always called Leonard his little monkey and tells him to basically go away and never come back. But you start to feel a little bit for Leonard in this moment that you may not have felt previously, and it's a lot to do with Martin Short's performance in those eyes.
Yeah, like I didn't know in sort of my memories of the season, I didn't necessarily think of Martin Short as much as this rewatch has revealed that he is such an integral part to the season.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it's hard to think about damages other than, say, Glenn and Rose because they're just so overwhelmingly good on the series. But when you rewatch the season, I agree. I think Martin Short, his
Mm.
underplaying of everything makes him such a compelling figure in the whole events of the series. Yeah, he's just that. And like, obviously, he reveals in that moment that Lewis knew about Leonard's sort of secret identity and
Yeah.
how, yeah, these two men that were infected by the Tobin family, how one sort of kind of got by in being more intelligent, whereas the other one in Joe was much more emotional, and obviously his struggles with addiction and the events that have happened to him in the present storyline that we see between murdering Danielle inadvertently covering up that he actually knew there's money and sort of getting into
Hmm.
that sort of tricky situations. It's yeah, these two compelling characters that are in a B story in a B plot really shows how impressive this third season is. Like there's just so much going on, but it's I'm trying to imagine planting myself back in time watching this weekly and how I would feel like I'd need to watch episodes over and over again because it's just
Yeah.
so compelling.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many details to keep track of too. And really, it's like clockwork that Leonard goes right to Tom after that for revenge and saying like, "Yeah, I know where the Tobin money is," and can give that to him in exchange for immunity for himself. And I just this is always such an excellent narrative device for me whenever like the upper class is like kind of abusive to their staff or the people they work with and ungrateful for their service, but then those employees, they know a lot more than they let on, and they can very easily sing like a canary and show them who has the real power here. Like that is always dramatically satisfying to me personally in a very eat the rich sort of way. So he becomes kind of this unlikely ally in all of this ultimately. And then I think we should get to this finale as its own thing, which is the next one's going to go
Hmm.
in your throat, which is just one of the darkest episodes of television I have ever seen. Just unrelentingly dark. Even with like Patty and Ellen winning another case together, it is just bleak because it opens with a young Patty being told by her doctor that yes, you've got the bar exam coming up, but being a mother is more important than that. And you're like, oh no, like what is going to be revealed here by the end of this finale? It's such a haunting tease for what is to come. But that's also where Ellen is securing this deal with the DA for immunity, which clears the path for Leonard to provide access to where Tobin's money is. And it's interesting because Patty is a little bit wary of whether they can really trust Leonard to pull through for them. But Ellen and Tom are confident, and so she kind of has to take that leap of faith to a certain degree. And I think you're sort of feeling like there's something like a real spidey sense for Patty that like something could be going wrong here. Keep in mind, she's also thinking a lot about her past lately, of like what Michael had said to her previously about how people either leave you or they die, you know? And so that's where I think she's correctly predicting that Tom's life is in danger, in how, like, if he goes through with this deal with Leonard, like maybe the Tobins could find out about it, you know, and it kind of confuses Ellen and Tom when Patty kind of abruptly seems to change her mind. But yeah, she senses something is off.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of playing into that family theme of this is a moment where
Mm-hmm.
Patty, sort of as an adoptive mother for Tom and Ellen, sort of worries for them, but she sort of has to have that moment of letting the birds fly free from the nest,
Yeah.
where she knows. I mean, obviously, how as it plays out, if she says no, but they end up going along with their plan anyway, it's just sort of a complicated thing where Patty is this kind of mother figure for these people that she has created, and knowing how the season plays out is that she loses one of her children is such a devastating yet inevitable. Like the fact that the show told us in the first episode that Tom is going to die, and we can still feel so tense the entire episode as this
Mm-hmm.
man is brutally like stabbed, is like going from place to place. Like it's just like a consistent like 60-minute episode of Tom is like on this slow march to death, and it's just
Yeah.
so dark. And yeah, it's incredible television. And like I agree, that title alone is worth watching the episode
Yeah.
for.
Yeah, I mean, to bring up the Twin Peaks comparison again, it is like you're watching Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me in a sense of just being like, you're just watching somebody in the steps leading up to their death. And so there's just so much dread as you're watching it of figuring out how exactly it's going to happen for Tom. And how it does happen is quite brutal. I want to get to that in a minute, but I also want to talk about Lily Tomlin in this finale as well, who I think is absolutely phenomenal because we get this revelation with Marilyn telling Joe that the whole reason Lewis committed to this Ponzi scheme was to cover for Joe. and his bad business deals. And it was all basically to protect Joe. And then, of course, Joe, what does he do but fully lash out at her, telling her that he's dead to her. It's really brutal. And I think Lily Tomlin really breaks your heart in that scene, even though she's done certain things throughout the season where it's like she's been complicit in all this. She also co-signed Tessa being murdered eventually. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's like the magic of Lily Tomlin is like you can see how everything she did was to protect her family. And when her family is in shambles and Joe disowns her, it just leaves her so empty and just devastated. And she really just plays into the physicality of feeling so drained in that moment. But then even with how cruel Joe has been to her, she still confesses to Patty about the Ponzi scheme and how she knew about it the whole time. And she just wants to protect Joe in everything. Mm-hmm. Like she just wants Patty to leave Joe alone. Because then maybe Joe will settle and like take her back into his life. Like, again, it's very tragic and very Shakespearean. And Lily is really like playing it like in this finale, like one of the great like Shakespearean women, like a Queen Gertrude or like a Lady Macbeth in her despair at the end of the play, you know? That's how I felt like watching it.
It's incredible to see these two contrasting mother figures in Patty and Marilyn, and how both are making, where one, Patty is making selfish decisions. She is thinking she's caring after her family, but she, at the end of the day, sort of making these decisions to forward her own momentum, whereas Marilyn is making these decisions to protect the family and suffers the ultimate consequences. Like that moment where Joe basically is like, you will never see your grandchildren again. The way Tomlin plays that emotion is so devastating. Like I was so impressed yet again, and just being like, oh my God, like why is no one casting Lily Tomlin in these great dramatic parts? Because this woman like is just incredible, and wig included, you know, gotta always mention a wig. And we didn't even mention how obviously these characters' names. Joe finds out from Marilyn that Tessa was his daughter, and how sort of Marilyn's withholding of that is what led to the death of Tessa. And then you sort of have the ultimate betrayal where Joe finds out that he was inadvertently responsible for his daughter's death.
Yeah.
Like it's truly horrifying.
Horrific.
Like how this family has crumbled, and how this is like obviously the final moment we have between sort of the last remaining stable family members of this great Tobin family. And Lily Tomlin has been incredible throughout the season, but I agree this finale is just sort of a great conclusion to her character arc.
Yeah, and the last we see of her is watching home movies and seeing like Baby Joe and realizing how horrible things have gone, and deciding I have to go to the East River now, where she jumps off the bridge to her death, which again is very Shakespearean. All of this,
of course,
this part of it, and
and is foreshadowed in an earlier flash forward, in an earlier episode where we see someone fall from the bridge, and you sort of don't know who to expect. And I'm glad that the series just replicated that shot and didn't necessarily show us the perspective of Marilyn jumping from the bridge, because you just know through subtle context that obviously obviously they tell us in the next scene, but you know the moment that body falls that this is Marilyn, and she has lost everything, and her last moments of reliving her love through old family movies and then reaching this conclusion is just devastating.
Yeah, it's really rough. And also, like, the show can be rather unsubtle at times, and that's why I appreciate when those moments happen that are more on the subtle end, to your point of not having to just do an extreme close-up of Lily Tomlin falling, you know? But anyway, I mean, Tom is just so desperate by the end here, and, like, he's so close. He feels like he just needs this one meeting with Leonard, and, like, that'll be all over. So, going rogue, defying Patty's orders to call it off. And that's where all the trouble begins, where Mr. Zedeck's, I think it's his right-hand man, or possibly his son, because they look so alike that it's very strange, demands to know where Leonard is. And that's where it's like, well, this is where it feels like Tom's life is about to come to an end, because Tom admits that he has no idea where Leonard is, and this guy stabs him in the leg and proceeds to beat him up. And that's where Leonard then finally shows up and attacks this man. And then Tom finishes the job and is just like fully getting so bloody and like murdering this man in very brutal fashion. I was getting some American Psycho vibes from what Tate Donovan was doing in that scene. Just really rough. Mm-hmm. And that's leading to Tom limping back to his house. He's fully injured, losing blood. And then Joe Tobin is there waiting for him and, is threatening him, of course. And Tom fights back and calls his father a greedy scumbag or whatever. And that sends Joe over the edge, naturally, leading to Joe drowning Tom in the toilet. It is really rough. Just a brutal act of violence that to me is just like one of the most effectively filmed murders in the entire show, where it's just this man who's fully mentally disturbed at this point and kills this man in such a barbaric way. And just like seeing Tom's head in the toilet, now a corpse, just lifeless there. It is just so horrific.
Yeah, it's a moment that even knowing that Tom was going to die, I never would have expected to happen. Like it's so dark.
I know.
And such a devastating conclusion to this character who we've grown to appreciate as sort of an important character in the beginning, I'd say, chapters of Damages. Like he is maybe not as important as Patty and Ellen, but sort of that necessary character in their complicated relationship, and seeing how he goes is just so devastating.
Yeah. We haven't talked too much about certain things like this homeless man that Tom had befriended as well, who kind of helped save the day and bring this sort of envelope that he spotted with this key evidence and kept it in his little shelter, where Ellen finally gets to pick it up. And anyway, it is a victory for them. So they're able to bust them, and Joe goes to jail, and he's even admitted to murdering Tom. But also, it's like no one is celebrating from this. We're not popping champagne bottles like we were after getting Frobisher and season one. This is just like a tragedy, no matter what way you slice it, for all involved.
Yeah, like we didn't even mention how Leonard, sort of in a ending to Silence of the Lambs, sort of flees the country and gets away with all the money. Like,
I know.
This man who sort of kind of gets his justice by having played such a supporting part in this family's tricky, dark story, getting away with everything, feels satisfying in a way, especially knowing his backstory before he became Leonard and sort of after becoming Leonard. It's sort of a great little conclusion for his character arc.
I think so. Yeah. I was admittedly happy for him, ultimately. Then he just got out of the country and is just like, go and reinvent yourself somewhere else. But in the end, Patty and Ellen go back to the pier that they met at in the season 1 finale as well, where they talk about how they're going to miss Tom, and they discuss family and Patty's big regret that she lives with to this day, which is her daughter's stillbirth, which we come to find out is something that she forced because she felt that she had no other choice. Because she was told by her doctor back in 1972 that she was having complications and that she should restrict herself to bed rest until the baby is born. But Patty had her ambitions of being an attorney in New York, having gotten a job as like the first woman at her law firm that she was hired at. And she just gets an incredible monologue there of being like, I had to make a choice, marry him and raise our child there, or go to the city and be a single mother. I didn't know what to do. And we find out exactly what she did do, which is to go out there. And this is where you can also talk about another notable guest star this season, Keith Carradine, who plays a man named Julian, Decker, who's first presented as an architect who like enters Patty's life in the present day and offers to remodel her apartment and needs to open up the walls because there's something buried underneath. Of course, all of this turns out to be kind of a symbolic ghost situation in a sense. being a metaphor for Patty's trauma, essentially, because he is revealed in this flashback sequence to be this farmer who had spotted Patty when she was pregnant because she wandered onto his land. And this was the day that she made that fateful decision to terminate her pregnancy, you know? And some of this, I think you could say, is slightly heavy-handed, to be honest, but it's to the point we've been talking about with like the Sopranos influence. I think Sophia brought that up in the season 1 episode, this idea of like dreams and ghosts in this way as a dramatic device, and how these traumas in these characters' past are sort of manifested in these dialogue with the characters. But still, I think it is so dramatically effective by the end here that I'm just kind of left with my jaw on the floor.
Yeah, like it
The trauma.
totally informed the trauma. It
Mm-hmm.
totally informs your overall reaction to Patty, and how, as I sort of mentioned, her sort of being a selfish individual basically originates from this decision to choose ambition over parentage. And that plays out too when obviously her tricky relationship with Michael, which in this finale we also get the answer to. That car crash is for by her. This sort of like, it's a weird car crash that sort of comes out of nowhere. Like it just sort of happens to happen in a way that, sure, he happened to be driving by while Patty was driving in this street. And it
Yeah.
just sort of, again, serves this motif of like family, and how the first decision of sacrificing her daughter really influenced her decisions. And sometimes ghost stories can be a kind of use of story that I don't necessarily like, but I think it,
Yeah.
by having us follow this character sort of in rare moments throughout the season, feels pleasing. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Glenn is pretty incredible in these final moments. And I love how so many seasons of Damages end with Patty and Ellen by a body of water. It really frames their sort of one-on-one interaction so well, where there's such an open space behind them, but they are so focused in on one another, that I just really
Yeah.
love. And yeah,
Yeah.
this is just such a great conclusion to the season, and how we finally discover the original sin of Patty Hewes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly that. And all that imagery that we get, we don't even see a young Patty's face. We just kind of see her from behind, and Glenn's voice has kind of been altered to sound younger. But just the imagery of her with her hands covered in blood, very, very effective. And also, to your point, the way that everything is framed is entirely intentional, you know, in those body of water sequences that you mentioned. And then it's that final exchange of dialogue that really says everything, where, Ellen is asking, I want to ask you a question, like career advice. You've accomplished everything you set out to do. Is it worth it? And Patty says nothing. And yet she
Hmm.
says everything here, because it's like, what if she says yes? Like, she'll have basically like sacrificed her daughter, and that what was worth it? And we've seen how devastated she is whenever she visits Julia's grave. So that's not really the case. But also, if she says no and she says it's not worth it, then like, what was this all for? Like, it's so the answer is kind of in that gray area, really. And that's yet again what makes the show so great for me. And Ellen kind of gets her answer even without her answering, and it's just like, I'll see you, Patty.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Like with that, it's like it continues. Even if this was the last season, it sort of makes the story of Patty and Ellie. I can imagine it continuing, because Patty's never going to be able to answer that question until she gets to her final days, because she still has life to live, and she'll never know if this decision that she made really was worth it until like she is reliving her whole life in sort of that sometimes brief moment people live as they're upon death's door.
That's exactly right. It's such a dark note to end this season on, but very fitting with the season that is all about family. And like you said, just talking about Patty losing one child in the past. She has lost one of her children, essentially, her surrogate children, in Tom in this finale as well. And yet,
Hmm.
she still has Michael, and here she still has Ellen, you know. So, and they will
Yeah.
continue to have a very complicated relationship in both dynamics. So, just as we get to this end here. We can talk about anything we possibly did not talk about in all this, because there really is so much going on with this season that we couldn't possibly cover absolutely everything. But do you have notable quotes or observations?
We didn't even mention Arthur Frobisher returning in this
Yes.
season.
This is what I was going to bring
And
up as well here.
there is
It's
a
so
sequence
funny.
of scenes where he is obviously producing a movie about his life, and I enjoyed the inclusion of Tony winner Katie Finneran playing a version of Patty in this table read, and whoever they employed to become Ray Fisk basically might as well just been Zelko Ivanic, because that man captured his voice as if I was listening to the Ray Fisk from season one.
Yeah. And we have Craig Bierko here, fresh off of another legal drama, Boston Legal, playing this Terry guy who is like this actor producer who wants to get Frobisher's life story. And at first, you're definitely like, what does this have to do with anything? Is this just filler? You know, you're kind of wondering how this kind of is going to add to anything. Or do they just really love having Ted Danson on this show and just want to give him another storyline? But, you know, he still does a very good job with kind of portraying Frobisher still trying to like rehabilitate his image and trying to build some sort of legacy for himself, possibly even now through this film. And he wants to do all of this because he's investing in like wind power now, and he wants to get Terry's endorsement through all that. But this is just such a fun, also like meta commentary in moments too of just like the show that we've already been watching. Because in this sort of version, it's like Frobisher is portrayed as like a good man, and Patty is this Machiavellian villain, which to me felt probably not intentionally on the writer's part, but it did make me think a little bit of like a nod to Fatal Attraction, with how like the you know the producers kind of considered Michael Douglas's character like this fundamentally good man who got caught up in something that was bigger than him or whatever, whereas like the woman Alex was like the big villain in all of this. So all of that kind of discussion of how they're going to portray these characters was very funny to me.
Yeah, especially when Arthur obviously first sets out to not villainize Patty, but then when in a meeting she sort of disapproves of this movie they are making, he sort of
Yep.
inadvertently is like, well, let's just present her as this horrible woman because she is that. And while I can agree, the sort of return to Arthur Frobisher sort of feels like unnecessary, but then when you think of it, how it's concluding the whole first three seasons of
Yes.
Damages, especially for the Ellen character, and how also we got the return of Timothy Oliphant, who is sort of again from season two. It's all sort of reaching this conclusion where Ellen finally gets her just desserts by those going down who were responsible for killing her fiance in the first season, sort of finally getting their comeuppance. And while it just sort of come out of nowhere towards the end of the season, I enjoy how it is included because Ellen's arc
Yeah.
needs to reach its conclusion just as much as Patty's does.
Mm-hmm. Right, because Frobisher, in one of his classic sort of coke-fueled rants to Terry, is revealing certain things about what he may or may not have done that may or may not include killing Ellen's fiance, which Terry is naturally a little bit like creeped out about and spills to Patty these things, and that gets the ball rolling there. And yeah, love Timothy Oliphant showing up in the finale here and essentially confirming all of Ellen's suspicions, and that Detective Messer, creepy glasses guy, did kill David, and at Frobisher's behest. And he also confirms that he was Messer's partner and they had a history that included the leverage that Messer had over Wes. And, you know, is learning these things about how, like, he was basically lying to her from the beginning, and yet what they ultimately had was real, you know,
Hmm.
and is kind of just like, well, I do have to sacrifice myself in order to let you have justice, Ellen, but that's what needs to be done. What a man. What a gentleman, you know? You literally will go to
Yeah.
jail for her.
Yeah, I love how by having Timothy Oliphant return, this sort of led to his getting his own FX series with Justified, sort of
Yeah,
how Glenn's appearance on The Shield sort of led to Damages. So I love this sort of
exactly.
FX series to the next one pipeline that we have running now with three series sort of connected to one another.
Yeah. I think Lily Tomlin should have gotten her own FX show.
Oh, for sure. I mean, can we make this count towards getting Grace and Frankie off the air 5 years later?
I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Yes. Anyway, though, did you have any other like notable quotes from the season or any just stray things?
I sort of love in that confrontation we had between Jill and Patty, her sort of line of, what is it? I'm giving you the carrot, you don't want the stick. I love that quote
Yes.
and how Patty like directly delivers it to her. Like there's sort of, yeah, there's a lot of great quotes like that that sort of stick out in your mind that I enjoy, especially a lot of Glenn's reading of these quotes really make them land. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's another great
Yeah.
moment.
Also, in that scene, another quote I wrote down was when she's like, "Oh, come on, Jill. You run an art gallery and a pretty shitty one at that. Business isn't exactly booming."
Yeah, no, that's another good one as well.
Yeah, it's very funny. Also, I think Ellen gets a good one too in this little Ellen's like, so how is Michael doing anyway? And Patty's like, doing quite well without me, essentially what she says. And Ellen's like, well, that would make sense. You always said you were a terrible mother. And kind of gives her a little smile.
Yeah. I love there's the during the flashback moments, there's that really dramatic, like Glenn yelling over the phone at Ellen, being like,
Yeah,
I told you to stop. Like, we get that early on, and you're like, whoa, what is this leading up to? And then when we find out this is Patty's reaction to Tom's murder, it's just such a brilliant, dramatic moment that Glenn plays that is over the top, but like feels it makes sense when you consider her sort of parental relationship with Tom.
exactly. Yeah, so R.I.P. Tom. Great season for Tate Donovan. I bet he was a little upset that he didn't get an Emmy nomination. Just saying. Because he put in some really good work here, I must say.
Yeah.
So I think on that note, we can get into the release and the reception of season 3. So it aired from January 25th to April 19th, 2010 on FX. Ratings were even lower than season 2, once again, dipping below 1 million viewers quite often, but very critically acclaimed as well. There was a feeling that there was a bit of an uptick compared to season 2 and more of a focus, and there was appreciation for the Tom stuff and all these new guest stars. So, yes. And then with awards, it did sadly lose out on a Best Drama Series nomination at the Emmys, but the actors branch was still very much here for the show. It got 5 nominations for season 3, all of which were for acting. So Glenn got her 3rd consecutive Emmy nomination in Drama Lead Actress. Martin Short was nominated in Supporting Actor. Rose Byrne got her 2nd straight nomination in Supporting Actress. And then it got 2 guest nominations for Ted Danson and Lily Tomlin. Sadly, it did not win any Emmys. As I think I stated last week, the era of Damages winning Emmys is already over, sadly. But then in the winter, the Golden Globes completely dropped the show, and Glenn got another nomination at SAG, but she once again lost to Juliana Margulies. So, any thoughts on the reception of season 3 and how it felt like maybe like with awards it started to fall off a little bit, but it still had some respect overall?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to awards for Damages season 3, I remember at the time being very surprised that Lily Tomlin didn't win the Emmy. Like, I think she was really favored to win it. And seeing that she lost to another Law and Order SVU special guest star in Anne Margaret, sort of, I mean, I remember watching the episodes at the time and sort of being shocked by Anne Margaret's win, even with the love for Law and Order SVU at the time. Lily Tomlin not winning an Emmy for this sort of feels incorrect,
No,
especially
doesn't sit
when you
right with
see.
me.
No, I mean the Rose and Martin Short losses can make sense to me because, like, Archie Panjabi winning for the first season of The Good Wife is one of my favorite Emmy wins because it was such a surprise and for
Yeah.
such a standout character in that first season. And even Aaron Paul winning his first Emmy, I think, for Breaking Bad
Yep.
this year. And then also, obviously, we love Glenn winning Emmys, but Kira Sedgwick finally winning an Emmy for The Closer because of, I remember Juliana Margulies, because this was during the tape system
Yep.
where I think Juliana Margulies had submitted not necessarily a great standout episode, sort of coming in with all the momentum, losing this Emmy is one of those Emmy surprises. In retrospect, that makes sense. But yeah, I
Hmm.
would have loved Damages to get a bit more recognition in the season. I think, as we've talked about, it's such a satisfying season. And it's just sort of a thing that happens with series that run multiple years, even 15 years ago, is that sometimes they can lose a bit of investment because people sort of are always looking for that new shiny thing.
Yeah. I feel like that's especially the case in drama series compared to comedy series. Like eventually people just drop off for whatever reason. But I do think it was received as a return to form after kind of that again, that slightly more drawn out feeling of season two. This season did feel more focused and more thematically rich. So, it still had those positive reviews, and the specificity of this being based off the Bernie Madoff case gave it more of a hook, I think. And I don't know, it's just a more well-oiled machine. But I also think with awards and with viewership, it was like you're either on board with the show by season three or you weren't. And I think that may have caused a little bit of the ratings drop off and the awards drop off a little bit as well. It was never the most popular show ultimately. And so it probably felt a little more on the bubble in many respects. But with Emmys, like you said, I mean, after two consecutive wins, she did get another nomination, but she had pretty good competition, I would say, compared to the first 2 years. All due respect to those first two fields that she was up against. There was Connie Britton for the first time for Friday Night Lights. Great. Love that. We had Mariska Hargitay for Law & Order SVU again. We had January Jones getting her one and only nomination for Mad Men. Juliana Margulies, like you said, and Kira Sedgwick for The Closer. And I do really love that Kira Sedgwick won, which was definitely a surprise considering Juliana had won the Globe and the SAG, and Archie Benjabi had won earlier in the night. So it's like you would think they would go hand in hand. But yeah, I do remember Kira having a really great episode submission, and for her to finally win on her fifth season of The Closer after being a perennial bridesmaid for the first 4 seasons, I'm sure it was a huge shock that it finally happened for her. And I do also love watching the clip of the announcement and how Glenn is just absolutely thrilled for Kira. I don't know if you've seen that lately, but she's just like, oh my God, like she's never been happier to lose an award than she lost to
Yeah,
Kira Sedgwick in 2010.
no,
Because it's her
absolutely. And I
category
think,
sister, you know?
yeah, and I'm sure Glenn herself was like, "Oh, I don't need like I'm doing great work, but I don't need a third award for this." There are so many great dramatic actresses that should be winning alongside me. Like,
Yeah,
sure, Glenn Close, I'm sure would be the Katie Heron, where she would want to break up the Emmy and pass it to every one of her co-nominees.
I think so. Yes. She's so kind. So I think with that, we can get to our last segment. We can rate Glenn's performance on a very specific scale, thinking about her performance as Patty Hewes in the third season of Damages. Is she ready for her close up? Low Glenergy, close but no cigar, Glennicent? What do you think?
There's no other option for her performance as Patty Hughes in any of the seasons for me other than Ready for a Close-Up. Like, this is
Yeah,
a defining performance in Glenn Close's career. Even if she never received another Oscar nomination post this series, thankfully she has received three others since the start of Damages, it would go down as one of her greatest performances. And how lucky we are as a culture watching society that we have these 5 seasons of Glenn Close giving us incredible work where if you have a lazy afternoon, you can just watch one episode of Glenn Close in Damages and just be like, whoa, this is why I love television. And this is why I'm glad Glenn Close, the originator of movie star joining series scripted television, especially for actresses of her generation. It's just, yeah, it's an incredible performance. And if someone were to say weren't ready for their close up when talking about Patty Hughes, I would have to totally disagree with that person.
yeah. Well, obviously, you're not going to get me disagreeing with you here at all. Maybe it's like a slightly incremental step down from the first 2 seasons. Maybe you could make that case, but she to me is so transcendent in especially the season finale that she really leaves you on a high. I mean, this is a really tough season for Patty where she didn't always feel like she was in control. And I think Glenn really navigated the sort of internal struggle of Patty quite well this year, and her being so haunted by her demons. And I include Michael as one of her demons, demon child. And so, yeah, she just continues to provide more layers to Patty as it goes along. And even though like the writers are making this show up as they go along, they didn't have some grand design for a lot of this. She still feels like so fully formed, even with the new layers that we add. And that's just a testament to her power. So, yeah, that is the end of an era for Damages on FX because, as we know, it was canceled after this due to low ratings. But it will soon be revived by none other than DirecTV, which we will get to in a few weeks. We're going to take one episode away to talk about the sequel to Hoodwinked. Just a fun little thing Glenn did on the side. And then get right back into Damages the week after that. But Eoin, thank you so much for helping me break down this very complicated sort of labyrinthian season at times. I think we did it justice, so thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you for having me return. It was great to sort of having relived now watching Damages, and I'm going to try and watch the 4th and 5th season, which I was a fan of when it originally aired. Even obviously with the it maybe slightly being below, but you will get into it when you discuss those seasons. Damages is just a time in television that I miss dearly as I continue to be a television watcher, sort of appreciating long-running series and wanting them to succeed every single year.
Exactly. Especially these women-forward series,
Exactly, yeah.
So, yeah. Where could people find more of you on the internet, potentially talking about more television?
Yeah, so you can find me across all social medias at Eoin Daly. I talk quite frequently on my stories are on with previous guest Chels and friend of the pod Chels and Jesse and Paige. We talk about mainly Drag Race, but also you can catch them talking about soap operas. We talk about, I don't know, The Traitors and Survivor and how maybe we might not be the fakest fans of the series, but it's a great, I love podcasting with them talking about television because television is always an incredible thing, whether it's bad or good. You can also find me with the One of Us Network talking about the latest in streaming series, which is fun to watch as well. But yeah, you can just find me online talking about film and television and actresses. And if you're interested in my thoughts on Glenn Close's whole career, you can find me reviewing a lot of her work. In this past March, I dedicated a day every day of that month to discussing one of Glenn's performances that you've already covered or will future cover. So if you're interested in my whole thoughts on Glenn's career, you can find it across all my social medias.
Yes, highly recommend. I was perusing a lot of your progress through the month and many good takes. Anyway, yes. Thank you all so much for listening. You can find me at Kevin_Jacobsen on Twitter and Instagram, just Kevin Jacobsen, no underscore on Blue Sky. You can also listen to my Oscar-themed podcast, And the Runner-Up Is, for coverage of every Best Actress race. And the Runner-Up Is on all platforms. And to keep up with the world according to Glenn on social, follow The Glenn Pod. Rate, review, and follow. And with that, I'll bid you all adieu.